Don't forget to give a thumbs up or subscribe if you'd like to see more of this type of content. My next project is known as a dizzy bowl. Unfortunately, when I was editing my video, the very first section of the video I somehow lost. So I'll just explain what you missed, and then the video will pick up from there. So the dizzy bowl is a segmented bowl made of many, many pieces. So what I did was I took a number of different species: maple, cherry, birch, butternut, mahogany, and cut them into strips, then glued them together to make a block, and then cut slabs off of that. The part that you're missing is the glue up, where I glued all those individual slices up, but I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So I just want to give you an introduction, and then the video will pick up, and you'll see from there. Thank you. So I have my first block glued up. This is it here. You can see now the different layers. I just passed it through my thickness planer to get a nice smooth edge here and here. And you can see now very clearly the different species of woods, the different thicknesses, the different colors. So what I'm going to do now is I've got another one glued up here because I'm going to need two. I'm going to need all this wood for the bowl. And I'm going to take this over to my bandsaw and then cut panels out of this. So I have my bandsaw set up. I built a fence here which I can adjust, and so I can cut different thickness of panels. So I'm just going to pass this piece of wood in here up against the fence, and that will give me slices off of this. And then from there, I'll smooth those up, and that's what will become part of the bowl. Now you can see this is my first panel, and I'm going to need 10 of these. 5 from this block, and then 5 from the corresponding block. And that's what's going to be used to make the rings on my circle. So I'm just going to go ahead and pass the rest through, continue to make more of these, and then we'll come back. So I've gone ahead and I've caught 5 layers out of the block I had made up. So that gives me 10 of these pieces that are all prepared to go. They are what's called a bookcase. So the center line is here, and then the pattern repeats going out from the center. So the 5 layers end up making, I'll have 10 half rings. And I'm going to draw my circles on each one of these. And again, according to my plan, you can see they're all different. So if you look here, I've got 5 layers. So there's those 5 there, the different colors. And then you see that this ring from the first layer ends up being used down here, and so on and so on. So that you end up, in the end, you can get your bowl out of that. So I'm going to use all of that wood. I'm going to use all of the wood. So I'm going to mark out my circles, and then I'll show you when that's done. Cut them out on the bandsaw, and then start gluing them together. I'll make this spreadsheet available in a link to this video if anyone else is interested. So there's the first layer marked out. I've labeled them 1A, 1B, 1C, which corresponds to my plan, and you can see the 3 rings. So each layer will have 3 rings marked and cut out and then assembled. Okay, now that I have them all marked out, I'm just going to go ahead and cut them out on the bandsaw. Now you can see these rings will get pieced together, and then subsequent rings will sit on top of them. So I'm just going to round this off, and this is going to be my base in which I'm going to start gluing the rings on. I'll just make it round for now and put a mount on the bottom here, a recess to go into my chuck, and then I'll worry about shaping it once I start gluing up the bowl, but for now I'll just make it round. So I have the first piece glued onto my block, which will be the base of the bowl. Now I'm ready to glue on the second piece, and this is where the dizziness begins. The first thing I did was I took a sanding block and just squared that up on the lathe with the spinning. And now I'm ready to glue on the second piece. So if I were to follow the same pattern, you see here how I've got a dark strip of walnut and a light strip of walnut. I'd line those up, but in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rotate it. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up, I'll rotate them all clockwise, and I'll line it up so that the light walnut on this side lines up with the next piece of walnut there, and then I'll just repeat that pattern as I go up the bowl. So I'll do the same thing every time. So I'm starting here and I'm going to rotate it to there, and yeah, I'll glue that in place, and then we'll move on to the next layer. So here's the final glued up version. I actually glued these 5 rings, the first ones, together as one ring. So they're glued onto the bottom of the bowl here. So you can see here I've got it clamped. I've also got pressure from my tailstock pushing up against it. I'll let that sit overnight. And then what I'm going to do in the morning is go over any seams that look like they may need a little extra. I've got some CA glue which will penetrate into any cracks or crevices, and will do a good job at just holding everything together. So it's all clamped here pretty tight. Like I said, I'll just let that sit overnight, and then hopefully by tomorrow I'll be able to start turning. Now you may notice there's a big step here from here, but there's actually this ring here, just the way it was designed, actually overlaps these rings quite a bit. It's just, I didn't need all this material here on this one. I could have cut it about here and just stepped out, but I left all these outer diameters the same. So as the bowl slopes up, that'll be cut away anyways. But there is, like I said, there's considerable overlap between this ring and this ring in here, so I'll be fine there. Be exciting tomorrow to take the clamps off and take a look at it. Here's the final glued up version of the Dizzy Bowl. And everything looks good. It's ready to turn. I think you can see the inside here. You can see how you've got this dark pattern repeating throughout the bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that now. It's a little bit out of balance, although I tried to get the ring cut as round and get them glued on precisely, but it doesn't take a lot. You've got a lot of weight here and it spins fast, so it doesn't take a lot to be out of round. So it is not turning quite smoothly yet. So I'm going to make a backing plate just to hold everything in place. Also to put a little pressure on it from this direction. You'll see that in a minute. I did have one earlier. This is not my first Dizzy Bowl. It's my second. The first one flew off on the lathe and hit me. Didn't do any harm, but it did hit me. And when I told my kids, they said, "Oh, did you get that on video? That would have been really funny." Not so funny, but anyways, that's kids. So I'm going to get ready to turn this. I'm going to try and maintain a flat surface on the top, put a bit of a rim on it just so you get a little bit more of the pattern. The walls are going to be fairly thin, but I don't want it this thin on the rim. I'm going to roll it over and get a bit of a rim on it. So yeah, I'm going to get ready to turn it and you'll see that in a minute. So you can see what I've done here now. I've mounted a circle and I put my live center here and I just buried it into the wood. That'll hold this into place so as it spins, this here bearing turns as well. So that allows that to spin. And that just keeps pressure on the bowl in the radial, in the axial direction, and just make sure that it doesn't want to come this way and start to break apart. So again, I'm going to keep this here until I get it round, and then a lot of the force will come off of it. You'll see that as it's spinning. It vibrates a little bit right now. I'll turn the lathe on so you can see it. It's not bad, but it's at a slow speed. That little bit of vibration that you're seeing there will come out of it completely. So I'll just keep this backing board on it until I get it round. Yeah, I'll start turning. So you may have noticed there I switched tools. Sometimes with different woods it's good to try different cutting tools. So this is my scraper. This is a carbide tool. I like the carbide tools and I wasn't sure which one would work better. I've got a couple carbides. This one's got a round tip. Some of them have a square tip. The round carbide tip removes very little wood. The way this bowl is laid out, this is all end grain, and end grain is the most difficult to turn and get a clean surface on. But the carbide is seems to be doing a good job, so I think I'm going to continue with it. The outside is pretty well round now. I want to kind of stop there and start on the inside because I want to make sure that I don't get too thin. I've got a little bit more here at the base to go, and then I'll switch to the inside. So right down here on the base, there's a little bit more to go. I'm still got a bit of a square lip there. I'll try and work that a bit, and then I'm going to switch to the inside. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the inside. There, starting to take off kind of the square edges. It's starting to round. I've still got lots of thickness here, so I'm really curious getting down into this area because that's where it really transitioned quite a bit. So I'll have to be very careful there that I maintain the thickness and right down to the bottom. I've got lots of thickness out here. If you remember, I had those first 5 rings were all the same diameter, so I've got lots of thickness to work out here. It's right down in the middle here that I have to be a little bit. Okay, you can definitely see now the pattern of the bowl itself and why it's called the dizzy bowl. I'm going to start I'm going to get my calipers out and I'm going to measure the thickness and start working the uniformity of it. Again, I want to just make sure that I don't get it too thin in any one place. I'll also work the outside of the base down here a little bit more. It's still a little bit square edge there. And then we'll be ready to start sanding this. Good news is it has not flown off the lathe. Everything's round now, so the pressure's off there. But my kids will be disappointed that I didn't get hit with a flying bowl, but I'm quite pleased with that. Now, just feeling along inside and outside of the bowl at the same time. It's getting pretty uniformly thick, and it's still plenty thick enough. I don't have any thin spots, which is good. So I'm just going to go over a final cut on the inside. The outside I'm happy with, but just a final cut on the inside, a couple high spots, one right there, one right there, and then I'll start sanding. There, that actually helps straighten it out a bit. I went back to my square carbide because this really has no curvature to it. It's a straight line. So this square edge, just sliding it downwards, is making good contact and is giving me a better straight edge, which is giving me a much more uniform thickness. I did the same thing on the inside as on the outside. Okay, I was able to remove majority of the tear out there that I had on the rim. I've switched to power sanding. It just gives you a little bit more sanding ability, and sometimes it works better than others, and this is one of those times it seems to be working well. As well as that's working, I think I'm going to just take the tool a bit. I've got a bit of tear out there that's fairly deep, and I don't think I'm going to be able to sand it out. So I'm going to switch over, touch it one more time with the tool, and then we'll go back to sanding. I realized I wasn't recording. I just took the carbide tool again and went around the rim. The only spot was right here. It is end grain, I've noticed now, in the beech nut, or butternut, sorry, which was kind of a soft, punky wood and had some wormholes in it. And that may be all I'm feeling there is a little wormhole. So I think I'll just sand that and call that good. Okay, that's 400 grit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean it up with some denatured alcohol and then hit it with some sanding sealer. The reason for the denatured alcohol, I don't know if you can see, but especially when you're sanding a dark wood next to a light wood, sometimes the dark sawdust gets over into the light wood and it makes just makes it a little dirty looking. The denatured alcohol will clean that up fairly well. See there on the cloth, sawdust. I know I mentioned this before. Next I'm going to put some sanding sealer on it. It does a couple things. One, it helps close up that end grain a bit, and it also raises the grain, which will make the final sandings that much smoother. You apply the sanding sealer, it darkens it up a bit, and it really starts to bring out the natural colors in the wood a little bit better. I'm going to let this dry for half an hour or so, and then I'll come back, do a couple final sandings, and then we'll put the finish on it. Okay, I've sanded it up to 600, I've cleaned it with denatured alcohol, I put sanding sealer on it, and I like to just burnish it. If I burnish it, I take my sawdust, my shavings, and I just hold it up against it. And I find that gives me as smooth as finish as I can get, and then I'll apply the final finish and this will be done. You can really start to see the shine. It feels very smooth. I'm going to probably put 5 coats of this on. It's really a friction finish, so you'll see here it actually burns into the cloth. It gets hot on the fingers, but that's what you want. So you put just a drop on the cloth, paper towel, and then you just press it in. So here you have the finished product. It's a dizzy bowl. It's got pretty good shine on it. You can see that there. It's finished now. You can see how the pattern spirals around here. See that. All that's left, I've got to put my logo on the bottom of the bowl and sand that a little bit. I wasn't able to get to that. So I'll put my logo, sand it, and put a finish on there, and then this will be a finished bowl.